Hey guys, in this video we're making this beautiful beaded wire bracelet. It has a simple hook and loop clasp and the wires are wrapped around to frame each bead. We're using 6mm gemstone beads and the wire is a 20 gauge dead soft silver wire. For this design I use one 30cm length and one 85cm length. So just measure and cut those two lengths and then we can start on our bracelet. So first up, grabbing that shorter piece of wire, then with our round nose pliers leaving a little tail straight at the end and bending the wire around the round nose pliers to form a loop. Bringing that tail right across the other wire. Now bending this little tail around the other wire to lock this loop in place. Bringing it around nice and tight and tidy so that it's a nice strong connection. Once you've wrapped it around at least one loop, you can cut this little tail off nice and short and crimp it in tight so there's no sharp edges. So you should have a nice tidy loop on the end of your wire. This will be the loop for one half of our clasp. Now moving on to our longer piece of wire, we place the ends together and follow it back down to the middle. Starting to make a bend in the middle here. You can bend these wires down straight and gently bending these wires across each other to form a nice small loop in the middle. Now grabbing the loop on the smaller wire, we place it up inside this loop. And gently bring these wires across to pull this loop smaller. So gently wrapping them around underneath that loop on the smaller wire. Gently pulling them in tighter so that you've got a nice, secure, tidy connection. Now I also bring the wires across to the opposite side just to make sure they're wrapped a couple of times and it's really nice and secure. So we want one wire coming off to the left and one wire coming off to the right, just making sure they're nice and tight and tidy. Now that is already the loop for our hook and loop clasp. Now we can go ahead and place our beads and start our wrap. So we've got our shorter wire in the middle and the two longer wires on the outsides. So we're going to go ahead and place our beads onto this middle shorter wire. So placing beads on to about 16 or 18 centimeters just to make sure that we have enough. Once you've placed a bunch of your beads on, then bend the end of your wire over so that you don't lose the beads off the end. Now onto the wrapping. So I like to hold the end with the loop on in my left hand and we're going to just wrap one wire at a time. So holding firmly in our left hand, I'm going to start with this top wire, making sure the next bead is slid up towards the left. So we're just wrapping one bead at a time. Holding firmly in our left hand and just bringing this wire down around the back and up in between the beads. And again holding firmly with our left hand, bringing the wire around the back and between the next bead. And we're sort of bending the wire around the top of each bead. Holding firmly, bringing the wire around the back and between the next bead. So each time making sure those beads are far to the left and just continue bending this wire around the back, sort of forming it around each bead so that it comes over the top to frame each bead. Now working your way all the way along until the end, trying to keep that bracelet nice and straight as you go. I usually bead down to about 18 or 19 centimeters, then we add the clasp, bringing it up to about 19 or 20 centimeters total. So you can see mine here is just under 19 centimeters, that last bead, and I'm really happy with it so far. So moving back to the start again and holding it in our left hand, bending the wire down around the first bead, then up the back in between the two beads and back down again. Same technique, just bringing it the other way so that now we have wire framing the bead on the top and the bottom as well. Holding it all tight as you go and wrapping that wire down and around in between each bead. Once you've got both wires coming around that final bead, so you've got one coming off each side, then you can take some time to just make sure your bracelet's sitting nice and flat and that each wire is sitting in the position that you want it. So sometimes you need to just tweak these wires a little bit so that they're sitting on the side of the bead. So just take your time working with your wires until you're happy with them. My bracelet ended up being about 19 centimeters long, and then when we place our clasp on, it should be about 20 centimeters total. So I can take this extra bead off, and now we're going to make our clasp with the center wire, so making sure it's nice and straight and measuring about 2 centimeters down. So grabbing that point with our pliers and bending the wire back around to come straight back down again. So making sure this is a nice small bend and our wires sit nice and straight next to each other. Now we want this wire to be able to sit straight, so we're going to just cut that little end off, but making sure it's still close down to the bead. So just bringing those, if you need to cut a little bit more off as well, just so it sits nice and straight. Not too much though, we need to wrap around both wires. Once you're happy with it, we can hold it nice and tight and bring both of these wires around the base to lock it in place. Bringing each wire around the way it's already coming and bringing it around the bottom there, making sure to wrap around both of those wires on the hook. Nice and tight and tidy. We don't want this connection to be too bulky. Once it's nice and secure, cut that tail off and crimp it in tight so there's no sharp edges. Now wrapping this last wire around, bringing it around the way it naturally comes, and this is the last layer on top, so make sure it's nice and tidy. Bringing it around tight and secure to hold that hook in place. You want to cut this end off on what will be the inside of your bracelet, so just check and see which side of your bracelet is the inside and just cut that off nice and short, crimping it in tight so there's no sharp edges. Now it's time to gently bend your design into a bracelet shape. So gently working with your wire to bend it around. Now coming in with our round nose pliers, grabbing that tip just over halfway along and rotating it around to form a hook on the end. Just take your time bending that wire, making a nice hook shape, and I gently bend the tip up as well so that you can hook it onto the loop easily. So there's your beautiful beaded wire bracelet.